You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. We are so glad that you have stumbled, found, or in otherwise landed upon Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast and YouTube channel where two gentlemen discuss various horror and science fiction films, television, literature, those things that are genre intensive. Key influences on those films and things that those films then in turn influenced. My name is David. If you are joining us for the first time, wow, thank you so much. We are both really glad you are here. Hope you enjoy it, and you'll come back and see us again, and you'll subscribe and like and do review and do all those things that help us keep this going. If you are returning, then obviously we're doing good things, and we're glad you are back. We want to welcome you. Again, my name is David, and this is my partner in crime, Tim. Tim, how are you? What have you been doing? You're in the woods there.
I'm good, David. What have I been doing? What is going on?
What is
my genre week?
Yes.
Well, I'm happy to say that I revisited something that I think I talked about either earlier this season or maybe even as far back as last season. And it was a little documentary called In Search of Darkness 2.
Second one.
This, I can't explain how much I love this documentary, even the bad parts of it, which are some of the films. But it is a documentary on 80s horror alone. They go decade by decade. They pick about 5 movies from each decade. They bring
each decade or each year?
I'm sorry.
Each year.
I mean, each year of that decade is what I meant. You're right.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No worries. And you know, I watched the first one. It's 4.5 hours long. I'm like, how can they do another one? Well, it's 4.5 hours long too. They've got a format, not unlike ourselves, where they tackle the project by the decade and they do it year by year. And they usually pick, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to 5 films maybe. And then in between each year, they do like an interview with Nancy Allen or, you know, somebody that was relevant at the time in a lot of 80s horror movies.
Okay.
Barbara Crampton or whoever. So that makes it interesting too. They probably picked more of the stellar films in the first decade. So now they're starting to go into more of the cheesy stuff or the stuff that you saw on a shelf in a video store.
Oh, yeah.
And because of the lurid cover that, you know, just drew you in and then was truly
Toolbox
terrible.
Massacre or, you know, Cheerleader High or
Inhumanoid.
Yeah.
You know, the titles like that. Yes, exactly. That is what this movie is all about. As you can see from the picture behind me, there's lots of things from familiar films. It's even got a little picture of Ronald Reagan in there.
Yeah, of course. He's scary, terrifying.
But yeah, I highly rate it. I highly recommend it. If you're a fan, if you are of our age and remember those video stores and how you could be seduced by the covers of what ended up being not always the greatest film in the world, this goes back and pays tribute to them and their makers and their cast. And as I said before, I didn't think they could do another sequel. I mean, do a sequel to it because it's the original was 4.5 hours long. This one's 4.5 hours long. Well, guess what? There's a Kickstarter right now, and the third one is being made, and I assume it will be 4.5 hours long too, because there's a lot to choose from.
Well, yeah. 80s was a huge resurgence of films in general, but especially genre, horror, science fiction, you know. That makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah. And any of you guys out there that are interested, it is on Shudder. A lot of these documentaries I've talked about this season are on Shudder. So if you have the Shudder app streaming platform, enjoy.
Yes, if you're new to us, Tim loves Shudder. Shudder is what sci-fi wanted to be for sci-fi, but never was for horror. So Shudder, I've said it, I think, twice on the podcast before. I wish there was a really true sci-fi channel, not the crappy one that has been there for years, that really did the same thing that Shudder does for horror. You made me think of something. It might be interesting to see a documentary on marketing horror in the 80s. And talk to people that were like these cover designers or these title creators or, working, because, part of looking now it's totally different. But back then, part of what you're going to watch this weekend was standing there in those aisles at the video store and being attracted to the covers. This cover was really interesting, or this one isn't, or whatever.
Or usually the best covers were the worst books or movies because they're trying to put all their money into the marketing and not into the actual content.
Right.
Right. It's funny that you bring it up, and I'll just remind you and others out there that a few weeks back, actually it may have been longer, I talked about a book called Paperbacks from Hell. And it was about 80s book covers, which were equally as cool and not always as good as far as content. But
because a lot of times it's not the same as the poster. Sometimes it was. I remember Friday the 13th looked exactly like the poster. I Spit on Your Grave, all of those. But there were others that it was a totally unique VHS. VHS cover. And you had to conceptualize it, give that to an artist, have them do it. It would be interesting to research that a little bit. That would be cool. My genre week was not as interesting as yours. Yours is always more interesting than mine because I'm just totally inundated. But it's kind of like in your territory. So for those of you who are, current watchers and listeners know that, part of my job is I also help manage a theater, and that what comes with that is coming up with the films that we are going to show. And usually, second, third, fourth tier films, from decades ago, like next month we're showing, or in the past we've shown, movies of 1939 because it was such an influential year. Huge year. Huge year. Or we'll do a straight comedy week or a Western month or something like that. Well, trying to put together the last part of the year, of course, October is coming up. October is always horror. And I like to do horror movies, and you love horror movies. And I like to compensate
you picked some
that.
Great ones last year.
Yeah. I like to compensate that either in September and November and do some science fiction, that makes up for it. It's like my genre sort of thing. But and the way the process works is I have to, pick it out, find out who owns the licensing, and then contact that licensing agency and say, hey, do you have this available at this date, and what's the rate for it, and yada, yada, all that kind of stuff, because you have to have, copyright permission to show films. And what's happening is things are starting to get resurgence or remakes or reboots or whatever, and suddenly they black them out and you can't show them. So I plan this calendar and then I submit it, and then they go, well, you can have this, 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 and this, but not these four. Can't have them. I go, why can't I have those? Well, because you just can't.
Well, you told me that Spinal Tap was just off the grid, that you couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, Spinal Tap's just, it is owned by a private family now, and they're trying to rebrand it. And once they get the rebranding, they'll let people license it again. Yeah. And it's like, what? I want it now. Anyway.
No, they want money. They want to remarket it so that it makes money again. So that's what they're doing.
Well, the one that threw me off was I wanted to do, because I've been inspired by you and the podcast, I wanted to do like classic 30s, 40s, 50s horror movies. So, and the typical Universals. And I wanted to do the Universal Quad. So, for matinee, every Saturday, we're going to do a Universal monster. So We're going to do Frankenstein. We're going to do Dracula. We're going to do Creature from the Black Lagoon. We're going to do The Mummy. Cannot do Mummy. Cannot do Creature from the Black Lagoon. I don't know. Are they remaking them? I had heard that they were going to do a remake of Creature of the Black Lagoon because that's that dark Universal thing they're playing with the reboots. They did Tom Cruise's Mummy. They did Wolfman.
Yeah.
So I've heard, but I don't know. And I'm like, I can't do those. So I'm having to come up with other alternates. But the reason I say all that is because now I've been looking back at what movies, even if I don't like them, what movies might work. Like I've never seen The Conjuring, but I'm going to show it. So maybe I'll get to watch it, kind of thing. But I have some that I wanted to tell you about because I am going to show them. So Conjuring, Paranormal Activity, that straight to video cheesy one that everybody loved, and it was a piece of crap. Anyway.
That may be in our next season.
Might be. I am going to show Midsommar just because we
may or
both
may not
love
be
it.
in our next season.
We both love it so much.
Absolutely. I would love to see it on a big screen. I think it would be incredible on a big screen.
Yeah. The Descent. I'm going to show The Descent.
Oh, I did see that on a big screen.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And then some of the classics, of course, Halloween, The Thing, Poltergeist, all of those.
You took me off guard. I thought you were going to pick like Universal movies that you had not seen, like The Mummy's Hand or something like that.
But it would be cool. That's what I'm thinking. I still have to fill in these slots. So that's what I'm thinking of, is doing something unique that's all universally. Maybe it is, if I can't get Dracula 79, maybe I get, Dracula's Brides
or Dracula's Daughter.
Yeah, Dracula's Daughter, something. So, but I'll keep you posted on that. But that's what I've been doing, is researching what kind of horror movies can I show in October that people might want to come and see on a big screen with big sound and everything.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I could talk horror movies all day or not.
I know you probably couldn't. You couldn't. It's a good thing that today we're not doing. Oh, we are though. Oh yeah, because we're in the woods.
We're in the woods. I'm literally in the woods,
and I'm in the fantasy woods. This is after the witch comes. She takes over.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Well, as David has given a little bit of a clue, we are in the world of horror. And we have ventured back several centuries, if you're going plot wise, to a little ditty that came out in 2015, directed by Roger Eggers. It was his directorial debut. It is a movie called The Witch. Wow.
Just wow.
I know. I don't even know how to begin with this one. I will say that
before our podcast listeners, Tim behind him, because he likes his pictures, now has the poster with the double V for the W, and the close up of the next to final scene with the heroine with Anya Taylor-Joy, and that's both those images immediately just go wow, just wow, yeah. God, I don't know where to begin with this movie.
It's really hard because I know that there are going to be listeners out there or viewers that disagree with us, but I think this is probably one of the best horror movies of the 21st century so far.
I totally agree. I think it's in the top 10 of the 21st century, and I think it's in the top 20 of probably the
last century.
The last century. It's brilliantly executed.
It is.
Yes.
And I mentioned that it was Robert Eggers' directorial debut. It was also Anya Taylor-Joy's debut as an actress. And a lot of people may not realize that she's already gone on to become huge. She was in Last Night in Soho, the Simon Pegg movie, as well as The Queen's Gambit, phenomenon on Netflix.
And she's in Northman, which is Edgar's newest movie that he's just finished.
Oh, I said Simon Pegg. I meant Edgar Wright. Yeah.
But it's Edgar's newest movie, and she's in it as well. So is Skarsgård. So it should be a good movie. It's
Which
a Viking.
one?
Yeah,
There's so many of them.
The clan,
the
Skarsgård.
Okay. First, a quick synopsis.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the 1600s. I can't remember the exact year, but it's around 60 years before the actual Salem witch trials. And a family has broke apart from their colonization effort I think they were from England, although the son has somewhat of an Irish or Scottish accent. And for religious reasons, they separate, they go off on their own, and they basically build their own little farm. It's isolated and near a creepy wooded area. It's only creepy because of the way Robert Eggers films it. Really, it's not dark or anything. It's just ominous. And Shortly after they're there, the woman gives birth to their fifth child, a young boy, a young baby named Samuel. They're the children are Thomasin, who is Anya Taylor-Joy. She is the oldest. Then you have Caleb, who is her younger brother. Then you have the twins. I forgot their names. I'll come to that later. And then you have Samuel. And Samuel is being babysat, I guess you would say, by Thomasin, and she's playing peekaboo. And at one point, when she covers her eyes and uncovers them, the baby's not there. It's gone. And they just do a shot to the woods, basically. And you're like, holy shit, what happened? So the baby's gone. The parents are distraught. The family is upset. And things start to go downhill from there. Caleb goes out in the woods to check a trap. Thomasin follows him and asks to go, actually kind of cons him into it, says she'll tell their parents if he doesn't let her. They see a hare, which is just a sort of a wild
bunny
rabbit. It's a bunny, but it's kind of thin and wild looking, you know, gamey. And amazing what Eggers does with that hare. I mean, you immediately know there's something not right about that hare. It spooks the horse. She gets knocked out. Caleb goes running after their dog, who has taken off after the rabbit, and comes upon first he comes upon the disemboweled dog, which is, you know, truly horrific, because it means what's out there. It could be a wild animal. But then he comes across a little shack where an enchanting and beautiful woman comes out and starts to seduce him. We know, of course, that it's the witch, because we saw a scene earlier where she is basically chopping up Samuel and using his blood as some kind of ointment on her shriveled and ugly naked body. She seduces Caleb, so now he's gone. The father finds Thomasin out in the woods, brings her home. Now, not only has she been with Samuel when he disappeared, she was with Caleb when he disappeared, and all evidence is starting to point toward Thomasin as being a potential witch. And we sympathize with her because we know she's not, and all this horrible shit is happening around her. Caleb ends up coming back. He's very sick. He's naked. They try to heal him or help him. They're going to get him to the doctor, and he basically is out of it. He vomits up an entire apple whole with one bite out of it, dedicates and praises Jesus, and dies.
Yep.
And then they're basically convinced that Thomasin is a witch. They want to say the Lord's Prayer over Caleb's body. And Thomasin is pointing to the twins, saying, it's not me, it's them. They're out there with that black goat doing weird shit. And while they're trying to say the Lord's Prayer, it's not Thomasin that can't say it. It's the twins that almost go into a little coma type thing, because the words just hurt them to say, because they're religious prayer to God. And I don't know, everything just falls apart. The father decides they're going to take Thomasin to town. They were going to let her be like of service to another family because they're really poor and starving. And when he mentions that he thinks she really is a witch, she starts to accuse him of his sins and pointing out further the sins of these two little kids. He gets pissed off, locks all the children up into the goat shed, and then the next morning, with the black goat, yeah, Black Phillip, who is I don't know, what would you call him? The animal incarnation of Satan himself. Pretty much basically in this movie. Yep. And the next morning he gets up, the shed is obliterated. Well, that night the kids are in the shed. At one time earlier, she had been milking a goat that produced blood. So that was kind of an omen. In the middle of the night, the kids see the old hag witch nursing from the goat that gave the blood. And anyway, the next day, the father wakes up. The shed is in pieces. The twins are missing, and Thomasin is there again, of course, because whenever the children go missing, she's the one that's there. And before he can do anything, Black Phillip attacks him, gores him, kills him. The mother comes out blaming her. And I've probably gone in too much detail.
No, keep going.
Gores him. The mother comes out, blames Thomasin yet again, tries to basically strangle her. And Thomasin ends up killing her own mother. That is legitimately her murder, but it's in self-defense. So all of a sudden, Thomasin is in the same position the family was, only alone. In the middle of nowhere on a desolate farm, everybody's dead. She has no one else to turn to. She goes to, is it back to the goat shed? This shed is actually intact.
Yeah.
And Black Phillip is there. And we have this really ominous scene where she's looking at a book. And there's an old legend, you know, that if you're going to commit yourself to the devil or the witchcraft or a witch's coven, you sign a book. And as Black Phillip walks around her, all of a sudden you see a hand on her shoulder as if he is manifested into a human. And he says, would you like, you know, the pleasures of the earth or whatever, just come with me. And she signs the book. She takes off her clothes. She goes out in the woods and she becomes a witch.
And flies at the end, levitates.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mean to go into that much detail. I probably should have given a more concise plot synopsis.
That was a great synopsis of the whole thing.
Right. I mean, it's a very simple movie in structure and photography, but in theme, it is so complex in places.
Dense, very dense. Yes. Well, that's why I can understand. I'm glad you did that, and because it is a simple story. It is a straightforward story. It is very, very implicit that every time a child disappears, Thomasin just happens to be there. You know, oops, kind of thing. I can't understand the backlash that this movie got with people. I mean, I can for a little bit, because as we've talked about some of these, quote, slow burn, that's the trendy topic or trendy phrase, slow burn horror movies, they don't really work with modern audiences because modern audiences are used to action, gore, story, you know, just go. And this one, you know, I don't know if Eggers' intent was so much to scare people as just make you feel extremely uncomfortable the entire time, because just the way he shoots stuff and the way he does stuff just starts that tension in the back of your neck and that hairline raise and everything. It's just like, it's so atmospheric, I think is the best way to describe it.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, and we can get into it later, because I actually clipped a few quotes from critics about this movie. Critics predominantly love this movie. Fans are very, very hot
divided
with it. Yeah, very divided. A lot of people like us love it, and a lot of people do not like this movie. A lot of fans do not like this movie.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that from audience people, reviews like, you know, not scary. Oh, this movie bored me to death. This movie has terrible acting. And I'm like, okay, I need to never read anything you ever say again if you think this movie has terrible acting.
No, it's everything about this movie is great. Sorry.
and sorry, like I said, you lose.
And I was going to ask you that a little bit later. Like, what do you think? Why? Let's play devil's advocate. Why do people not like this movie?
There is a lot of there's a lot of indirect writing, in my opinion. So like, they're kicked out in the very first scene, but we don't really know why. We know it's some kind of disagreement between dad and the local religious people, but we don't really know what that is. It's not really spelled out of, you know, you part your hair on the left and we part our hair on the right, so you must be banished. Or
and I may be reading into this, but isn't something mentioned about religious freedom we came here for religious freedom. It doesn't say whether they wish to pursue religion or not pursue religion, but I think he's saying we came here for this reason and now you're doing it all over again. We're going to leave or something. I don't know.
Correct. Because essentially they're Puritans. They came
Mhm.
because of religious persecution in Europe. That's why they're in America. And this does take place in America, even though some of them have accents because it's early. It's like 1630 or whenever, it's right after, Columbus sailed the ocean blue or whatever, or Plymouth Rock. But so they
actually
came
it's long after that. That was 1492, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Plymouth Rock is better. So they came for religious freedom, and now he's essentially being ostracized and banished with his family because he disagrees with certain tenets of their religion. And he even later says he was stubborn. He should have just accepted them and not been banished and not cursed his family, so to speak, because he's taken all that guilt on.
Yeah.
But you have to.
We've also neglected to mention in the plot synopsis that other things are happening that signify their struggle, as far as like their crops aren't growing, things are rotten, they're starving. I mean, there's a lot.
He can't find anything to hunt. Yeah.
So all of a sudden they're starting to blame witchcraft on that as well.
But that's the point. This movie does not spoon feed you. It's a simple plot, but there's a lot of depth and density, like you said, going on. There's the whole patriarchy, and when he goes out and realizes that he can't hunt, he's a terrible hunter. How's he going to feed his family? He's supposed to be the hunter. He's the man. The women can't hunt. So maybe, Caleb can hunt for him. That's why Caleb goes out, because of the guilt of dad can't do it. I'll have to do it for him to help my family. And there's all this puritanical societal stuff all over this.
Oh yeah, the themes are just you could definitely write a thesis on this movie.
Yes,
the themes of like patriarchal society versus the wilderness, the unknown. But then you've also got like the wildness of nature and sex and witches versus the puritanicals and I mean, there's a lot going on here.
A young girl who's just reaching puberty, and you get into all of that. You get into some of the before. You get into some of the quasi incest of, if I'm alone and it's just my family here, my sister's looking pretty good.
Caleb's looking at the fact that Thomasin's developing breast things.
So there's that. There's nobody's really watching these children because mother is so much in grief. So is dad too, but he's taking it his own way. So now these children are just kind of running wild and playing with goats and talking to devils and all that. Well, and now I add all the religious allegory on top of that.
Right. And there's sin within the family that is not Thomasin, if you consider the fact that the father is lying or not admitting that he stole a cup, a silver cup that was within the family, and sold it in order to help them with their move, and basically lets the mother think that Thomasin did it.
Yeah.
So there's like inner betrayal within the family itself and the father and the daughter.
Yeah, the thematics,
better her be blamed than me.
And see, a lot of, I think, and I don't, there's a place for drive-in horror. There's a place for exploitation. There's a place for sexploitation, all of that. So I can understand audiences who want more gore, more fast-paced, more stuff, but this movie is not for them, because this movie takes some effort to watch and to enjoy and to let it, flow over you, like you say,
Well, and I mean, we're looking at it from a broader film perspective. We're not looking at it just from the horror eye, the horror eye. And some people are narrowing it down. And one of the things I read this morning was that a lot of reason why people don't like it or got mad is because of the commercials, which I don't remember, but apparently the commercials boasted that it was like the most terrifying film ever made or whatever. So they were expecting
but they did the same thing with Hereditary. They did the same thing with The Conjuring.
Hereditary, I would lump in with this movie because it's
I would too. It's definitely a key for this movie, but I watched the trailers, a couple of the trailers, and I do like the way they're done. They are very scary trailers, even down to the graphics. They have a quote from somebody saying, most incredible horror movie, and it's all done with fire going through the letters. or orange going through the letters, and then they disappear. So it's really creepy, very ominous. They use the music. The music in this is really strong too, because it's almost
it's not even really music.
Right. It's one of my keys. It's like 2001. It's like Atmospheres in 2001. It's very chorally, very creepy, atonal kind of sound. But yeah, maybe they went in with expectations of, it's going to be a slasher Puritan story.
I just read that, people are at the time were used to movies like The Purge and Paranormal Activity, and they were expecting jars, like things to jump out or shock you. And this movie is a whole better kind of scare to me because it's honest. it's honest is a strange word to use, but it's based in reality of that period.
Oh yeah, like the image
lets you find the horror. It doesn't throw the horror in your face. It doesn't show things. A lot of things are really darkly lit, like when that witch is sucking on the goat's teeth. You don't really see her. Even when she turns, you barely see what she looks like.
Yes.
And when
cinematography is brilliant.
Yeah. And when she's killing the baby, or, basically just, she doesn't kill, they don't show her actually killing it. They show her grab a knife, but then later
she's using the baby fat.
Yeah. She's slathering the baby all over her, to fly or whatever it is. And, but a lot of that is done not directly. It's done indirectly.
Yes. Yeah, but the horror, like you said, the horror comes from placing yourself in these situations, and they're horrific, even though they're sometimes saying they're good. The picture behind you is a great example. First of all, several things to say about that picture. The image Tim has is basically the family at dinner doing the prayers, which they do several times in the movie, but it's done from behind the mom's back. So she's in silhouette, dad's lit by the candle, the rest of the family's in profiling candle. And it's very desaturated color. So it looks almost like a period oil painting. It has those beiges kind of color. But the fact that they do the whole prayer and everything else, and you're just stuck in this. And how many times have we been there when somebody's taking the prayer too long and you're just going, come on, I want to be devout, but God, please shut up. You laughed, and I immediately thought of Christmas Vacation, where she sings the national anthem for the prayer instead. Anyway, but you're put in this horrific situation where you're watching this, and it's ominous, even though he's praying and all the family are all crossed hands and being devout and all that. You're going, this just doesn't feel right. There's just something, because we know he's a liar. We know they're accusing Thomasin of all this. It's just it's so like I said from the beginning, I think he wants you to feel uncomfortable. He wants you he lingers on shots a lot. He lingers on, and there's a lot of presence. The cinematography for this, I looked it up, but I didn't write it down in my notes, but they used a particular lensing and frame ratio for this that makes it makes everything look claustrophobic. So the rooms, when they're inside the rooms, they have a very claustrophobic feel to them.
Well, and the ceiling's really low in that room too, it looks like.
Correct. And the woods seem very tall and ominous and over the small characters there. So that adds to this presence of their environment alone is scary and harsh and uncomfortable. So
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about production. I've already mentioned that it was Eggers' directorial debut. He went on to do The Lighthouse, which I have seen. It's a really good movie too.
I have not. Is that Willem Dafoe?
It's Willem Dafoe and Robert Patrick. But
no, Patterson.
What?
Patterson, right? Not Patrick.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. It is Patterson, the guy that's Batman now.
Yeah, that's why I haven't watched it, because it's Twilight Boy.
Oh no, you should watch it for Dafoe alone. Okay. But that movie's harder to classify. Like, I don't know that I would even discuss it on this podcast. It is a horror movie, kind of, but not really. It's more of a mood, atmosphere, scary, creepy, weird movie. But anyway, it's great. I would recommend it on the site.
Okay.
This movie, I didn't write down what that ratio was you were talking about as far as filming, but the cinematographer's name was Jaron Blaschke, Blaschke. And this film was shot with natural light only. And the only real lighting techniques they used were candle. And that's why I'm showing you those two pictures, because she is in natural light and that room is in candlelight.
Yep.
Fascinating choice. Eggers wanted to be very authentic to the place and time, which is around 1630. Like I said, it was before the witch trials. He also based it on several, and this is another reason why I think this film resonates with me, probably from as a kid reading almanacs and things. This is based on several folk tales that are already out there. So, about witches using baby fat, like you said, for flying ointment, or, the actual witch trials where young women were accused of witchcraft, probably because they wouldn't give it up to some guy that wanted it. That kind of thing. A lot of this is steeped in Americana and our history, which also adds a layer of horror to me anyway.
Yeah. Well, journals, letters, he used a lot of the verbiage of that time period.
He sure did. Like, there was no letter W. That's why you see 2 V's for the word witch.
Yep.
He is from New Hampshire, I believe, and he wanted to film it in his native New Hampshire, but it was too expensive, I guess. So he had to film it in Canada, but he wanted them to have realistic accents, so he cast it in England. And that's where he found Anya Taylor-Joy. Thank God, because she is now like one of the best young actresses out there.
Yeah, definitely. She is strong.
And I think that's why Caleb may have a different accent. I swear Caleb sounds like he's Irish or Scottish to me. It's not the same as the rest of them.
But that's fine too. I mean, people had different accents.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. The film was, like I said, inspired by folk tales, fairy tales, and written historical accounts from journals, diaries, and court records. Much of the dialogue was lifted from those records. That's why they sound of that time, or it's otherworldly to us because we're not used to it. It was budgeted at $4 million. It grossed $25 million in the U.S. and Canada. Its opening weekend grossed $8,800,000. And then worldwide, it has made $40 million. So this basically said, oh, this guy's good.
Yeah.
He can pretty much do what he wants to now. And he did, he was very adamant about what he wanted. And I think that shows. I think his confidence is in this film.
I mean, as a directorial debut, it's amazing. I mean, it really is. Just the quality of handling the things he had to handle, from practical effects like the blood and the murders and all of that, to the atmospheric, to the lighting, like you said,
children, to animals.
To have the guts to say, hey, I'm going to light everything practically. I mean, that's like Barry Lyndon Kubrick stuff. You know, I mean, that's really good. And it pays off.
Yeah.
And the cast, to find that cast, because every person, even the twins who I hate and they annoy the crap out of me, are both well cast.
Mercy and Jonas. That's their names.
Yeah. Whatever.
Before we move on to the cast, what about scenes? You want to throw a few scenes out there?
Well, I definitely think this movie, you can't discuss this movie without the last scene. And is that, was it necessary? Because it might have been interesting. And I think when you and I first saw this and talked a little bit about it, we mentioned, I don't know if that necessarily was needed. It might have been interesting to leave it ambiguous, but then audiences may have been really pissed off.
Are you talking about her just walking into the woods naked and just end?
Yeah. Or not even have the whole goat scene with Philip. Her just there alone. So we don't know.
Blood all over her.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know. Was she a witch? Did this happen? Blah, blah, blah. Because the only time we see the witch is really that one shot and then with Caleb. So it could have been Caleb fantasizing or stunned or whatever. He was already fantasizing about his sister. So maybe, we don't know. But that scene definitely, the whole last like 10 minutes, the whole killing mom and dad being killed by Black Phillip and all, I was like, oh my gosh. I just didn't expect it,
Two that strike me. One, I think could easily, I always talk about how they have those reels at the Academy Awards where they show great scenes from movies.
Yes.
I think you could easily show that scene of her doing the peekaboo.
Easy.
I mean, it is like iconic and classic the minute you see it.
Yes.
And
just the fact that he does the ground view up of her and looking, right at the camera and everything. And then just what she sees as she's little Samuel and then little Samuel and then little Blanket with no Samuel.
And then nothing.
Nothing.
And you're like, what the fuck?
Yep.
Yeah. And it's coming ahead of time.
Yeah.
Another scene I would say would be the scene where Caleb encounters the beautiful woman in the the witch cabin.
Yes.
Out in the woods. And they've already set up that he's been kind of checking his sister out because she's starting to develop as a woman. And then here you've got this woman that's very well developed and seducing him, basically a child.
Yeah.
I mean, he may be older than he looks, but he's very small in stature.
He's young. I think he's like 15, 16.
Oh, really? Because he looks like he's like 12 to me.
He may be 12 or 13. I don't know. I can't remember his age. But and you've got another picture of the other scene that I think we should mention, which is Caleb's death scene, which is golly.
He's phenomenal.
Just scary. It's just scary because he literally coughs up the apple, praises Jesus, and dies. And you go, what? Did he do? What? Yeah.
And there's other little things we've neglected to mention, like the fact that they broke apart from the thing for religious freedom. But like as he and his father are hunting, Caleb has questions about Samuel, since he disappeared and wasn't baptized, will he go to hell?
Yep.
They've got that whole, you're going to burn in hell attitude for the tiniest of things. And he's, it scares him. It's just another thing we grew up with as kids if you were in a religious family.
Well, one of the precepts that runs through this entire film, in my opinion, is the fact that religion is fear. Religion is fear-based. The patriarchy in the town are fearful of them, so they kick them out. You don't believe like us, so we're going to kick you out and ostracize you and banish you and all that. The father maintains fear in his family through his prayers and through all of this religious zealotry that he has. But the witch side of it is all liberation, fun, do your own thing, let yourself go, be yourself, be carnal, be earthly, all of that. Even down to the end, we can all fly because
naked.
We can fly naked because we do our stuff, For sure. So I think that's all the way through it. And I think that's a really telling scene, is the scene between Caleb and his father. Because again, it goes on to that patriarchy too of, you're going to be the man. So I'm going to teach you the manly stuff, even though I don't know how to do the manly stuff.
Yeah. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least any or all scenes with Black Phillip.
Oh my God, please don't.
Well, first of all, he cast a great goat, because that goat looks like, it's black and it has those perfect horns. It looks like it could be the incarnation of a devil.
Oh, it looks like Baphomet. It looks like it does. It looks exactly like the statue of Baphomet. It even has the little white in the whiskers, kind of thing. it's the devil.
I think I actually have. Yeah, there he is.
he cast the devil as this goat.
And I love his eyes. His eyes are kind of lazy looking. Like, I got it. It's cool.
Yeah. No, you can't do anything to me, man. I've been a goat for 2,000
and they do drive me
years.
crazy, but I love when those little kids are just running around singing songs to that goat, man.
Oh,
Like, those little
I
kids are evil.
They are. I remember. We've done it on other podcasts where you suddenly go Black Phillip, Black Phillip,
Black Phillip,
no,
Black Phillip.
no.
That's my little kid voice.
I don't like Black Phillip. No, I
So-
don't like him.
Okay, well, let's move on to casting because we've been dwelling
Casting.
on it a little bit. First of all, we've already mentioned it's Anya Taylor-Joy's debut. She's marvelous. There is one other actress out there, and I am remiss because I cannot think of her name, but there's one other actress I would compare to her that is really strong, that is probably about the same age out there right now, and she plays Ruth on Ozark. And she recently was in something on Netflix called Inventing Anna. But anyway, this is, I mean, it's rare that I see this kind of talent in young acting debuts, and this girl is phenomenal. If you haven't seen The Queen's Gambit,
Julia Garner
is
Ruth.
she's the one. Okay. She was a model and crossed over into acting, and they make her look, she doesn't look like a model on Ozark. She looks rough on Ozark, but she is fantastic on that show. And to me anyway, I didn't mean to digress. Anya is fantastic as well. If you haven't seen The Queen's Gambit, by all means, you need to.
Well, and look at these movies back to back. Watch this movie and then watch Queen's Gambit. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's just startling.
The level of maturity in her is phenomenal.
And she's a very what I call an eye actress. She's very she does a lot with her eyes, so she's perfect for film. She does so well. Yeah,
she's got those really sad brown eyes, and
yes,
her hair is really not blonde, by the way.
And I get confused too, because at times, especially early on when I first watched this movie, but I get confused with her and Chloe Moretz, who's in who is another one that's similar, that I think is very good, not as good I think as Anya Taylor-Joy. And then the third one is, what's her name from Black Widow, the girl that plays Scarlett's sister,
the one that's Pugh, something Pugh from
Florence Pugh. Wow. Yeah, her a lot, because I do get a lot of, this obviously a key to this movie is Midsommar, because it's folk terror and it's all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
I'm glad you brought those up, because those are very talented young actresses as well. I believe Chloe Grace Moretz was in the American version of Let Me In, or Let the Right One In, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, she is good. The father, William, was played by Ralph Ineson.
Yes.
You may not know this. You probably don't know this. I found out on IMDb that he is an acting coach.
Yeah.
And the reason why you get these great performances, especially out of Caleb, is because Eggers didn't have that, that ego. And he said, I've never worked with kids. Can you help me? And he got Ralph Ineson to direct and help him with those scenes.
Had Ineson work with kids?
Yeah. He coaches kids and all actors of all ages.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that. He's strong. I remembered him as soon as I saw him. I remembered him from Game of Thrones. He was in Game of Thrones.
Right, which I was going to move on to, because Kate Dickey was also in Game of Thrones, and she played Catherine, the mother.
Yeah, I do think she was in Game of Thrones.
They didn't share scenes together in Game of Thrones, but they were both in it. I've not seen it, so I'm not really sure what they did in it. You would know more about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's a very, like we said, another reason I like this movie is it's a small movie with a very small cast. I don't really have anything else on anybody. I mean, Harvey Scrimshaw, Ellie Granger, Lucas Dawson were all child actors, the twins and Caleb.
Yep. Well,
the witch herself was played by two people, old and young. The sexy witch was played by a woman named Sarah Stevens, and the witch is played by a woman named Bathsheba Garnett. She sounds like a witch.
Yeah, I would be careful around her, definitely.
And then, of course, Black Phillip.
But Sarah Stevens, I looked her up because I was going, wow, she was such a presence in, one scene sort of thing. And she hasn't done anything else. That was basically it. She's done a couple little shorts.
Yeah, the young lady. Yeah. Well, she looks like a model, man. She looks like, I don't know.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Angelina Jolie or something. Yeah.
Yeah, she's perfect casting for a 13-year-old boy's fantasy woman sort of thing.
And I read that was one of the scenes that the kid playing Caleb was struggling with because he had never kissed a woman before. And he was really nervous about having to do that scene. So They got Innocent to help him with it. I love how they do that scene where they don't do anything too stark, but as they're closing in for the kiss, her hand goes up on his head and it's an old gnarly hand, like an old witch. And you're like, ooh.
There's a huge key there, of course.
Okay.
But
yeah.
But I agree. And then also I think I read in my notes, I can't find it right now, but I think I put it in my notes somewhere that he used a different frame rate for those scenes too. All the scene at the end and the scene with the witch, he used a different frame rate. So it just feels odd. It's not the same frame rate as the rest of the movie, which is great, brilliant. It sets it apart.
Yeah.
So
for sure. I think I read that Kubrick did the same thing in The Shining with like the elevators and the blood and that kind of stuff. As far as awards, this movie had a slew of award nominations on the indie circuit, not really on other levels like the Academy Awards or anything. Our friends at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films nominated it for Best Horror Film and Best Performance by a Young Actor. I don't really have any of the wins because they were all smaller film festivals, but I did a total, and this movie was nominated for 71 things on the indie circuit, and it won 43.
Wow.
That's more than half for those of you out there doing the math. That being said, I will tell you that I'm a little bit disappointed because it is not on the list of 1,001 horror or movies that you must see before you die.
He needs a new edit then.
I agree. I'm almost tempted to write Mr. Stephen J. Snyder and say, you need to reconsider this because this movie is a lot better than some of the movies you may have in 2015.
Yes, definitely.
You need to watch it again. So anyway, anything else before we move on to keys?
I just think, just checking my notes, we talked about actual journals and stuff like that. I would give this movie awards for cinematography, direction, casting, production design, and costume design. And I read that the costumer used actual fabrics from the time, so hemp and cotton and wool. So these costumes were almost totally authentic to the time period. Even so much as doing research in Georgetown and other or wherever Puritan cities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and everywhere else to find out what they actually wore at the time.
Yeah, I don't have the name of the book, but she used some book called Clothing of the something, you know, and it was like all historically accurate stuff as far as what they wore.
So should have had costume design and production design in general, like you said, designing the rooms with the low ceilings so that it feels claustrophobic. Or again, look at the shot behind you, which is Caleb's death essentially, and it's all monochromatic kind of coloring, huge light behind it, so everybody's in silhouettes or half lit or dark or whatever. It's just brilliant cinematography. And I read that Eggers actually, before he directed, was a production designer. So he actually did design sets and overall areas for movies and stuff. So he came into it with a great eye, obviously, a great visual eye to begin with.
Yeah. It's a very similar, actually, there's a key in this that I didn't even write down of the Evil Dead, in that when they went to Canada to film it, he wasn't happy because it didn't look like New England to him. So they went out in the boonies to film this. Their location was like half an hour away from civilization, and the civilization it was near was small. It was not like a city or anything. So they were out in the middle of nowhere filming this.
Yeah, and I imagine that helped him since he's only dealing with a small cast and all of them are family. You know, naturally being secluded like that would do something similar to like Evil Dead, where you get a lot of bonding with your crew and your cast.
And you also carry that isolation over into the theme as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Evil
Dead's a good key.
I forgot I have a lot of trivia. First of all, some of these are quotes I lifted, some are not. One thing that I thought was like an Easter egg for Robert Eggers is that in one shot, you can see the corn has signs of ergot, which is a hallucinogenic fungus that many attribute to real life stories of possession and witchcraft. Did you know that?
I had heard of ergot, but I didn't know you saw it in a shot.
Yeah, apparently it's in the scene where they're looking at like moldy corn or something.
Well, there's been speculation that that's part of like the Salem witch trials.
See, I didn't know that.
You know, that they were actually tripping balls. And then of course they're seeing things in the woods and all that and feeling like they can fly.
Crazy.
And since they don't understand chemicals at the time, you know, naturally they would think it was evil forces or spirits or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Before I get
it's like Belladonna was the same way. It would make people trip.
Right. The Satanic Temple has endorsed this movie and hosted several screenings of the film. Their spokesperson, their spokesperson, Jex Blackmore, addressed the film as an impressive presentation of satanic insight that will inform contemporary discussion of religious experience.
Well, there you go.
So it was endorsed by the Satanic Church.
Come on out, ladies. Kill your parents and join in the flying circle.
There's another note about Ralph Ineson being a father and being able to coach. They said he coached Harvey with a very sportsmanlike thing, referring to football a lot when he coached him in some of his acting scenes.
Oh, okay.
So they bonded that way as well. Before I get to the critic stuff, Black Phillip, once he's human and no longer a goat and standing behind Thomasin, asked her if she would like the taste of butter. Have you ever heard that?
It was a delicacy, right? It was something rare or something?
Well, that's kind of what I put. But apparently in the 15th and 16th centuries, the Catholic Church declared that eating butter was a bigger sin than lying. Bigger sin than lying, blasphemy, or impurity.
Were they trying to keep people skinny?
Well, no, it had something to do with the poor. The Reformation leader, Martin Luther, rallied against the edict, saying it was only enforced on the poor. So I don't know.
Interesting. I wonder if they couldn't monetize it. But the poor could make it. You know, all you need is a goat. You can make your own butter.
All you need is milk. Yeah.
And now you've got something to sell. That's so maybe, interesting.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
Those wacky Catholics.
Strange. Actually, Martin Luther's Protestant.
He was Catholic, though. He led the Protestant Revolution.
Right. Okay. Critics' response. First of all, well, I'll just go with the good stuff, and then I'll get to Stephen King. Anne Hornaday of the Washington Post. And this is what we were trying to convey in the beginning, and it was really hard for me not to jump to this. But she says this film joins the ranks of horror films like The Exorcist, The Omen, and Rosemary's Baby, saying that The Witch comports itself less like an imitator of those classics than their progenitor, a tribute to a filmmaker who, despite his newcomer status, seems to arrive in the full throes of maturity and in full control of his prodigious powers.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what she's saying is this can't be someone's first film. It's too good.
He was possessed by a demon to direct this movie.
Exactly. And very similarly, Jay Bowman of Red Letter Media not only said it was his favorite film, he said it's a masterpiece. It's a first-time filmmaker, which is shocking to me because it feels like it's made by someone who has been making movies for decades and is a master of their craft.
Completely agree.
And both of us were saying that when we started this podcast. I mean,
his lensing, his lighting, his choices, his balance, everything is just incredible. The pace,
right?
Because I mean, there is a sense of dread from the very first shot of this movie, and it just continues, even in the happy times when you might get a Thomasin smile. You know, when she's looking at talking to Caleb or something like that, it's still, there's something underneath it. It's not right. It doesn't feel good. It's just unnerving.
Right. And I would go as far as to say his confidence, because if you're doing your first movie, you're going to be doubting yourself left and right. And he clearly was confident in what he was doing and making choices to only use natural lighting or candlelight or what have you.
Which is hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be terrified that people would make fun of you, I'm sure, or not like it. Horror authors, two of them, Stephen King and Brian Keene, both reacted positively toward the film. Stephen King basically tweeted, "This movie scared the hell out of me," which is a great endorsement and very Evil Dead-like, you know, because he did the same thing for the Evil Dead. He said it's a real movie, tense and thought-provoking as well as visceral. Now, Brian Keene said what I have often thought, but I'm going to say this is his thought, so please don't come for me. But Brian Keene said The Witch is a gorgeous, thoughtful, scary horror film that 90% of the people in the theater with you will be too stupid to understand.
Ooh. Okay, then, like, Brian.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't think people are stupid. I think they're just used to something else, and they've grown accustomed.
I think the appetite is for faster, visceral, action-y, jump scare, that sort of thing.
Right.
This is you know, people said the same thing about, and it's one of my keys, The Shining. You know, it's too slow, it's too boring, it's too, you know, too simple a story, yada, yada, all of that. And there's a different, we've talked about subgenres in each of our particular genre. You know, this is that subgenre of folk horror, but I also think falls into slow burn. It falls into an intellectual story. You have to, you know, it's like Interstellar for sci-fi is you have to think to watch this movie and to appreciate it.
I think intellectual horror is a great key. Not a key, but a great description of what kind of movie it is. And I think that's why that woman compared it to The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. You have to think. It's not in your face.
And it's also not going to spoon feed you. And now she is going to do this, which does that. It's instead, why is she doing that? And then later on you go, oh, now I know why she did that, because of this. Oh my gosh. You know.
And you and I have talked, I mean, there are scenes in The Exorcist that are in your face, but you and I have talked about how it's the scenes that aren't in your face that are scarier.
Yes.
Like just showing that door down at the end of the hall being closed is much scarier than seeing her spew green vomit on a priest.
Right. Just seeing Mia Farrow's face, and as she slowly reacts and sees stuff or starts getting paranoid, that's the scary part.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think all of those that we just said are definite keys for this too, that she said. Exorcist, Rosemary's.
Right. You mentioned The Shining too, which I was going to segue with, because The Shining is a wonderful key to this film. There's so much of The Shining in this film.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. Just substitute Thomasin for Jack, because that's our protagonist that we're following. But whereas Jack is a little bit just because Jack Nicholson, I mean, even when he's sitting in the interview chair, he looks crazy. So we think he might go crazy. We don't know about Thomasin. Is she, isn't she, is she, isn't she, even up until the end, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, a direct key to me was, what's the room? 235, 237?
237.
237. That's Caleb and the witch. That's Jack and the girl, the woman in the room.
They're seduced by a young naked woman and she turns into an old hag. Yeah,
right.
That's right, like lifted out of The Shining.
Oh, yeah.
But you mentioned something, and I guess it would be more Kubrick, but I consider it The Shining as well. Other things, the atmosphere of this movie is The Shining. The shots of the woods remind me of the shots of the mountains. The music, the tonal stuff that you said is really from 2001. He uses some of that in The Shining as well. And you have two deviant little children that keep popping up. And
play with us, Black Phillip. Play with us, Black Phillip.
Come play with us, Black Phillip. Come play with us forever and ever and ever.
And ever.
So yeah, I mean, The Shining is all over this film. I can
he also uses
easily
single
say
point.
Eggers was influenced by that.
He uses single point framing a lot, which is Kubrick's big deal. Like the picture behind you, where the what we're supposed to see in the frame is directly in the middle,
in the center
of the frame, and that sort of thing. He uses that a lot too. So yeah, very Kubrickian in his approach to this, I think. I also have I have some of the typicals, like I have the Salem witch trials themselves.
Absolutely.
And I have the Crucible. This
Me
is
too.
a lot of Crucible, because we're following a female protagonist who is probably innocent in our opinion.
Right.
I mean, being the Salem wrongfully accused.
Yeah, the Salem witch trials and the Crucible are basically the same. I would say the same clue, or the same key. Excuse me.
Yeah,
because they're both about innocent women being accused of witchcraft and the paranoia that mounts because of it and what the consequences are. And that's all about this film. I mean, it's just within a family instead of a community.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as community, I also have Shirley Jackson in here just for the lottery and just for that whole feel. Anytime there's a folk horror story, I always think of Shirley Jackson.
Yes. I mean, that's definitely a folk horror story for sure.
Yeah. And I have one I know you have, which is Carrie. This is very, girl coming of age and finding she has special latent talents she might not know she has.
Right. And she's doomed because everyone accuses her of being, different, and she ends up going and embracing it at the end, which is exactly what Thomasin does.
After killing her mother. So
after killing her mother, exactly, exact same story.
You got to get those moms out of the way before you can have any fun.
Right. I have an old clue.
Yeah.
The Faustian legend of Germany that Christopher Marlowe ended up writing a play called Dr. Faustus around the 16th century sometime. And it's about selling your soul to the devil. It's that whole concept of putting your signature in the book because you want, earthly pleasures or a better life. So you commit yourself to the devil in exchange for that. And that's basically what she does at the end.
Leave your mark in the devil's book. Yep.
So that's an age-old legend key. Another one I have that's kind of old is Hansel and Gretel. I mean, there's a huge Hansel and Gretel thing going on here.
There is. Very good one. Yes.
Especially when Caleb is seduced by the witch in the woods. I'm like, don't go in there. She's going to put you in the oven. She's going to eat you.
Eat you. She ate your brother.
Yeah. She ate your brother. Well, she did something with your brother. It wasn't pleasant.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
I had the Crucible. Okay. Here's one I mentioned to you that you may not remember. I told you, I sent you a picture and I said, don't forget this.
Oh, okay. I forgot it.
It's a callback to a piece of art, and I did not know this until I looked it up on IMDb, but there's a piece of art called Angelus from Jean-Francois Millet. And it's a burial scene, and I've got it right here. That's it behind me. Yeah. And it looks almost identical to the scene where William and his wife are burying Caleb. By the tree. And it is quite clear that Eggers probably had this painting in his head when he set up that shot.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of that neoclassical painting era whether it's Andrew Wyeth or Malay or any of that. Again, it's very monochromatic paintings. It's very silhouetted looking, that kind of stuff, which he used. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, for sure. And then what else have I got? The actress I mentioned that played the witch, the older version, her name is Bathsheba. I said, it sounds like a witch. Well, before this film was released, The Conjuring premiered in theaters and featured the ghost of a satanic witch called Bathsheba.
There you go. See.
So that was probably a coincidental key more than anything, but
I'm
sure
it was
that was
funny. Intentional.
Yeah. We also mentioned Hereditary. I was out sick when I watched this movie several years ago, and I watched The Witch and Hereditary back to back.
My gosh.
I know, I had never seen either one of them and was blown away by both of them for different reasons. And similar reasons, but Hereditary is very similar in structure. Both movies have families that are picked off by a malevolent entity. Many family members are set against each other and die in face-offs with each other, as they do in this movie. What else? There's a coven in The Witch. There's a cult in Hereditary. And then doesn't the boy accept his his
heritage at the end?
At the end, and so does Thomasin. And
very much so.
There's a lot of parallels between this and Hereditary. It's also a slow burn and crafty and intelligent, intellectual type movie, as we mentioned before. And they are both polarizing movies because, like Hereditary, people either hate or love this movie, and it's the same with Hereditary.
Yeah, the family being picked off one at a time, all of that is in there. Yeah, so I could definitely see a double feature with Hereditary if you want to really.
I know, and I did it accidentally.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the day, I just walked around in a daze. I was like, I'm fucked up, man. This is too much. We mentioned The Shining already, and then of course you mentioned 2001. So that may be all I have.
Yeah. I don't have any more.
Okay, very good. So, in summation, what would you say?
I highly recommend it. I think if you want to see modern horror done in a really unique style that will keep you dreading and creeped out from the very beginning, also some incredible first-time work from actors and directors, this would be a strong movie to recommend.
My original thought would be that I wish it was a book, because I would have loved this book. I think it would have been a great novel, even though it's just, I guess, Egger's screenplay. Didn't Egger write it too?
Yep, he wrote it too.
Yeah. Yep. It's his screenplay based on folk tales and historical.
Yeah, it would be a great book, especially with Thomasin as your protagonist, sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that's going to wrap us up there.
Yeah.
David.
So we want to thank you all for listening to us ramble about creepy stuff in the woods. And we do this every week. Like we said, if you're just joining us for the first time, we usually alternate. So this week will horror. Next week we'll be doing some science fiction, which is more in my realm.
4 more.
And we've got 4 more in the end of this season. We have dozens more earlier. So you can go back on our YouTube channel or on the our webpage and see previous episodes, and you can pick out movies that you like and see what we thought about them. And we would love to know what you think about what we've just said. So if you like, dislike, have an opinion, have a thought, please let us know. Comment in that comment section, either on the podcast or in the on our YouTube channel. If you do use the YouTube channel, please subscribe. We would love to have you as subscribers, and that helps us. We also have a Patreon channel too. If you might want to support us that way, it helps us keep the web page up and going and all that fun stuff. And we have some alternate podcasts on it. We have one about classic Star Trek, and also about the X-Files, another scary one. So a science fiction one and a horror one, huh? What who'd have thunk?
Yeah, and some of that stuff is free and some of it is subscription based. So it's not all, it's not going to cost you money to watch it all. There's other stuff on there as far as bonus stuff.
Correct. And as far as subscription based, I mean, we're talking, you spend more at Starbucks, sort of
Right.
thing. So
And
yeah.
you get the X-Files and Star Trek.
Yeah, and more
deep
and
dive.
others and stuff.
Yeah.
So deep dives. But Tim, thank you. It has been a pleasure each and every week.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it.
Talk to you soon.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Stay out of the woods.
Be witchy.
Black Phillip, Black Phillip.
Black Phillip. I should have said Black Phillip.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the key.